with that, I'd like to introduce our speaker for tonight. So as I mentioned, we're really excited to have Narottamananda Prabhu speaking to us on Krishna consciousness at work tonight. He's served in a wide variety of duties and occupations in over 3 decades as a devotee. He's been a temple priest in Dallas, vegetarian caterer, a distributor of Srila Prabhupada's books on Krishna consciousness, a toy salesman, and preacher in China. Currently, as you can see, he serves as a truck driver traveling across the country, and he'll be able to offer us a deep and unique perspective of how to progress on the path of Bhakti Yoga wherever our professional routes take us. So thank you for joining us again tonight, Prabhu. It's great to see you again.
Hare Krishna. It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. So our first question for tonight, we'd like to know briefly what caused you to get involved in the path of Bhakti, specifically Krishna consciousness.
Interestingly enough, I was just a young kid, like in my early teens, and into music, into partying, into like just hanging out, and some of my friends influenced me. And I received a book at O'Hare Airport from one Prabhupada disciple. His name was Prataparam Prabhu. And he was a young guy. He's from Australia. He's the temple president for the Surfers Paradise Temple. Him and his wife opened that temple. And Prataparam Prabhu, he was the vice president for the Chicago Temple at that time, and he was also doing a degree in law at the University of Chicago. So between his service as vice president and going to college, he would spend part of his time distributing books at the O'Hare Airport, which I don't know if you know this, but Prabhupada asked our Sankirtan leader, at that time his name is Chipurari Swami, to go to the managers of the O'Hare Airport and ask them to change the name from O'Hare, which is spelled H-A-R-E, to O Hare Krishna. Which he did. He did do it, but of course they didn't change it, But anyway, so Prataparam Prabhu, he stopped me in O'Hare Airport and gave me a Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, part 2. And I was waiting for a friend of mine. His name is Tom Price. Now, Tom Price, he was a defensive end for Kansas State University. He was drafted by the Dallas Cowboys. Wow. And what happened is he got a bad knee injury, and they told him if he got hurt again in college football, that he might not walk. If he got hurt again in football, he might not be able to walk after that. And so his dad, who was an executive for Learjet at the Chicago O'Hare Airport, gave him an amazing job there. So he finished his college degree, but he started working at O'Hare instead of pursuing the professional football. And I had flown into the airport, and I was waiting for him to drive me home. I was still young. I was 16, I just turned 17. I just turned 17. So as I was waiting, that's when Prataparam Prabhu approached me and gave me the Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, part 2. So I met Tom Price later, and I really looked up to him because, he had graduated from college. He was great at football. He was the best friend to me. He's working successfully. And I really looked up to him. He was like an older brother figure to me. And so he told me that he saw me with the book. We drove home together. It's about a maybe 45-minute drive from the airport to where I was living in Crystal Lake. And he told me he'd also gotten a book. So we started to talk about the Bhagavatam, and he was helping me pronounce, I was reading a little bit to him and asking him about it. And he was helping me pronounce words like Maharaj and different words, terms in it. But the main thing was that he knew I was making bad choices at that time, just getting into partying and everything. So then he was telling me that he had read, and he thought this was like so good for me that it would give me a higher understanding of life. And he really encouraged me, to read. So when I got home, I just started reading, and I really was so impressed by Prabhupada's words. Like I felt like it was like my best friend talking to me. And and I'd been raised a Catholic. Our family is Italian. We're Italian Germans and Irish mixed. So but I grew up in an Italian community in Chicago. And so it was like in those days, it was still praiseworthy, like if a son became a priest, and things like that were still intact. And so I had an interest in religion, and also some of my older friends. I had some older friends through acquaintances, and they were also like we were always kind of discussing on this philosophical things on the side, because after a while you just get bored with your life. I mean, material life seems to be like that unless you just keep going from one form of entertainment to the next. At a certain point, you're just kind of like, well, what's next? So anyway, we started discussing the Bhagavatam, and then I went home and I started reading it seriously. And there's a particular chapter in there that it's Narada Muni instructing Srila Vyasadeva. This is the first canto, part 2. And Narada Muni was saying that actually Srila Prabhupada in the commentary talking about how it's necessary to get the association of devotees to make spiritual advancement. So my mother had gone with my brother and sisters to Florida, and I was in Crystal Lake near Chicago. Those days, it was like a country town. Those days, so I was more or less at home. I was at home by myself, and so I thought, yeah, I have to meet the devotees. And I thought, well, they must be at the airport. So I went back to the airport. I took my mother's car, drove to the airport, and I started looking for the devotees. And it was like nighttime by then. It was like 7 o'clock at night. But there was this announcement. I still remember it today. There was this announcement over the PA, and it was saying, the U.S. Supreme Court has passed a ruling that religious organizations may distribute flowers, books, and other types of paraphernalia in the O'Hare Airport. In no way is this condoned by the Chicago O'Hare Airport Administration. So when I heard that, it had just the opposite effect on me. Like I thought, oh my God, they must be here. Otherwise, why would they be making this announcement? So I ran all over the airport. I couldn't find anybody. And then I remembered that Pratapadam Prabhu, he had given me a Back to Godhead magazine with the Bhagavatam. And, I gave some like paltry donation for the book. And it was such a beautiful book. I remember once a radio interview with one of the BBT. He was the chairman of the BBT in those days. His name was Rameshwar Swami. And on this radio program, let me think, was it him? No. It was Hridayananda Maharaj. And on the interview, this man was asking Maharaj, oh, no, it was Rameshwar Maharaj. And he was asking, why are you, trying to get money for your books? And so, Rameshwar Maharaj was explaining, well, whatever money we get, we're using it to further, these teachings, to print more books. And he said, well, why do you make the book so expensive? And Rameshwar Maharaj was saying to him that he was saying to him, well, why do you want all the other books to be expensive and beautiful, and you want the book about God to be cheap? And there was some discussion like that, and about why we were asking for donations. Anyway, so um, I had gotten the book. I started reading it, and so then I went to the airport and I heard the announcement. Nobody was there. I went back home and I found the Back to Godhead magazine, and Prabhu had showed me, addresses of temples all over the world. And he said, we have a nice place here in Chicago. And those days it was a YMCA, right? Like on a one block off the University of Northwestern University campus.
Mm.
And you could see it in films with Srila Prabhupada there. And so, he showed me the addresses, and he said, if you're interested, just come by sometime, So I went back home, I raced back home, and I got on the phone and I called the Chicago Temple. And this one devotee, he answered. I don't know if you know him, but he's a spiritual master now. His name's Kratu Prabhu. His grace, Kratu Prabhu.
Mm.
Anyway, he's an Indian. He's a Gujarati Indian, and he has a very high voice. So he answered the phone, Hare Krishna. And I was like, yeah, Hare Krishna. I said, I got one of the books in the airport. I want to come by the temple. I want to come by the center and meet you, all of you. And he said, oh, I'm so sorry. All the devotees are sleeping. It was like 9:30 at night. And I was like on the other side of the phone, like, wait a minute, you don't understand. This is important. Like, this is my spiritual life. I'm so interested. Can I come now? No, you can't. I said, can I talk to anybody? No, everybody's sleeping. I was like, what do you mean? And then he said, you have to come tomorrow. So I got in my mom's car, drove to the temple the next day. And I remember pulling up in front of the temple, wondering whether I should go in or not. And because I had never been, I was born in Melrose Park, which is a suburb of Chicago. And I had been in a downtown Chicago with my mom and stuff growing up and things like that. But when I pulled up, it was just like I was going into some kind of shock. Like I had never seen a neighborhood like that, the old buildings and everything. And then right while I was questioning whether I should go in or not, this devotee comes bouncing down the front stairs of the temple. He looked like he probably weighed about 300 pounds and with a bright orange clothing on with his head shaved. And I just went into total culture shock. And I was thinking, man, these knowledge is so good, but these guys look like they're from another planet. So then I was waiting whether I should go in or not. People were walking past on the sidewalk, and I thought, okay, anyway, Krishna somehow inspired me in from within my heart. And I thought, okay, anyway, I've driven all the way here. Let me go inside. So I went inside, and there was a devotee. His name's Narottamananda Prabhu. So these are all Prabhupada disciples. And Ratna Prabhu, he greeted me, and I told him about the book, and I had Pratapadam Prabhu had written his name inside the book and told me to ask for him if I ever came. So I asked for him, but he was at college studying, So they asked another devotee to come in. So this one very famous Sankirtan devotee, his name's Prabhu. He came out and he started preaching to me, and then this other devotee came in who was later my Bhakta leader. His name is Kashiram. And these two were competing to preach to me. So and what was so surprising to them is I was agreeing with them because I had already read 3/4 of one of those big volumes of the Bhagavatam. And so one devotee was preaching me, you're not the body. I was saying, okay. Another devotee was preaching me, material civilization, is not going to make you happy. Okay. And they were like, what? You agree with that? I was like, so then I was already a vegetarian. Some friends of mine convinced me to be a vegetarian. They were professional nurses, husband and wife. And they taught me how to be a vegetarian for medical reasons. But when I started reading the Bhagavatam, like I was telling you about being raised as a Catholic, Prabhupada gave me all the reasons, why the things that I had learned as a Catholic and the things that I had learned from, my friends, being a vegetarian. Prabhupada was giving like all the philosophical reasons in the Bhagavatam, and it's so deeply enriching and it's so fortifying. Like I can remember, like just from the first few book pages of reading, like in the introduction, I felt like inspired to want to follow the principles, to want to be a devotee. It's an amazing transformation, you know. And so anyway, I remember they asked me, and I told them, well, I'm already vegetarian. They were like surprised. They asked me, what did I like to eat? So I like Asian food, by the way. Italian and Chinese. I was kind of grew up like that. So yeah. So then I told them, really, I like to eat are these breaded mushrooms. I don't know if you've ever had them, but they're really good, you know. And it's like a cauliflower pakora, though, but with a mushroom. And so they went in. So Pragosh Prabhu went in and he got this big bowl of like with like 20 fresh, hot cauliflower pakoras in a big bowl of tomato chutney. And I'm just sitting there eating these cauliflower pakoras with the chutney and just listening to him and Kashiram Prabhu competing to preach to me. Anyway, to make a long story short, they invited me that evening. Was a program. They showed me around the temple. It was like amazing. And that night, Tamal Krishna Goswami, who later became my spiritual master, initiating spiritual master, was speaking. So I went to the program. They introduced me to him. They really like primed me that it would be the most important a meeting of my life, and that I should pray to try to understand and to remember the things that he speaks to me about. And then there were about 150 devotees there, and those days the Chicago Temple was really, really famous. It was the #1 book distribution temple in the world. They were distributing like $100,000 worth of books per week.
Wow.
One 72-foot tractor trailer, you know, the 53-foot trailer of Bhagavatams every week.
Wow.
BBT had its own semi at that time. So, yeah, $100,000 in book sales. There were like 120 Sankirtan devotees. Everybody averaged about $600-700 to $1,000, $2,000 a week in book sales. And anyway, that's a whole nother topic we could have discussing about preaching. But so to finish this up, this is what inspired me. So they talked to me. I went to the program, and then Tamal Krishna Goswami, he like literally disentangled me in a 45-minute darshan from my whole material life, asked me so many questions about myself, and then made the philosophy so accessible and meaningful to me. And I remember at the end of the program, he asked me, what do you want to do after hearing all this? And I said, I want to take these books and give them to everybody I know. And all the devotees started cheering, Jai Haribol! And it was like such a dramatic experience, you know? So then he called me up to him, and they had made these huge oatmeal cookies. I still remember these big, big, warm, chewy oatmeal cookies they were giving out to everybody with hot milk at the end of the program. And the devotees were like patting me on the back and everything. And so my Guru Maharaj called me up to him. He gave me a big stack of cookies, like maybe 5 of those big cookies. And he said so many personal things to me. It was very like deep and with a lot of love. And he asked me, why don't you come back on the weekend and spend the weekend here? Because I was working at that time. I was an assistant chef. I was a salad bar chef. I would set up the salad bar for a hospital.
Wow.
And yeah, I was just 17. It was a summer break in the middle of the summer. And that's the job that I got. Okay. So I remember I was like really excited. I remember driving home, and like my whole worldview had expanded so dramatically. It was like a rush. Like I just couldn't believe the way it like had transformed my consciousness of my life, my whole, you know, understanding of myself and the world. And I was just thrilled by the whole experience. So anyway, that was a Sunday or a Saturday. So Monday morning, I went to work at the hospital, and so normally I would just cut up all this stuff for this huge salad bar in the cafeteria, right? All the vegetarian. But that morning, the supervisor came in and she called me over to her, and she said, "Hey, the master chef is sick today, and I'm going to need you to help us cook." And I thought, okay. So she said, "What I want you to do is I want you to cook this side of beef."
Oh,
So I don't know if you've ever seen a side of beef, but it's literally like half of a cow.
yeah.
So, during the darshan, one of the things that my Guru Maharaj explained to me was this term called Atmahara, means the killer of the soul. And he was talking about how even though people seem to have good intentions for you, but because they don't have a spiritual understanding of life, actually they're killing your soul.
Hmm.
So, what the point he was making to me is that, you have to go beyond being emotional in your relationships. Someone might say, "Hey, Winston, hey man, you're working so hard, you're getting up so early, why don't you just come out and party with us and have a few beers or whatever, right?" And so, they might say that to you really nicely, and then your guru, or maybe it's one of your friends, maybe somebody like I don't want to mention any names here, but
that's just that's all of my friends, by the way. I'm gonna out myself. No, just kidding. And I've calmed down.
no, I thought I was the only one, Dr. Winston. So there we go, man. All right, I'll be
Disco.
your friend.
Like, oh my goodness! I was like, oh.
Hey, so anyway, what ended up happening was this: that he explained this term to me, Atmahara, and the point that I'm making later, I discussed it with him, that generally we function on the emotional platform. If somebody is emotionally supportive, even though it might be the worst thing possible for us, right? Like cooking a side of beef. But they're just nice about it, and a devotee might be kind of heavy, like, "God, don't you understand, like this life could be over in a heartbeat, and you need to get more serious about your spiritual life." So you see, emotionally you would go along with the person who wants you to cook with the side of beef, because the devotee is being heavy. Heavy's the term, right? So, but if you're, rather than listening to your emotions, if you think about something intelligently, how should I say this? Rather than thinking about how something is being said, try to understand what is being said.
Right. Mm.
Emotional means you just listen to how something's being said.
Yeah.
And intelligent means you're listening to what is being said.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So anyway, Atmahara, he explained this to me. So I went in, and there's the supervisor, and she was super nice to me, right? Like, "Oh, I really need you to help, and this will be such a nice service for the hospital and everything." And so she brought me into this walk-in cooler, and there on this rolling table was this half side of beef.
Mm.
And she said, "Hey, I'm going to need you to cook this." And she said, "Don't worry, we'll show you what to do." So right at that moment, it was like my coffee break. So I asked her, I said, "Would you mind if I take my break first before I help with this?" And she said, "Oh, yeah, no problem." So I went out in the hallway. Those days, there were no cell phones or anything. So I went out in the hallway, and there was a payphone there. And I called up the temple, and I asked the devotees on the phone, I said, "Hey, would you guys mind coming and picking me up? I'd like to move into the temple. I'd like to come and try out Krishna consciousness." And they were like really excited on, "All right, well, hey, somebody wants to join you guys." And they said, okay. My mom was in Florida. I was 17. I was literally, for lack of a better term, a runaway. I'm one of those Hare Krishna runaways, that we're not supposed to talk about this, Anyway, so yeah. So they came to my house, and I took the apron on and I hung it on the cell phone, on the wall phone, on the payphone, and I walked out and went home, and I never went back.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing.
So that's a little bit about it.
It's like a movie. It's like the beginning of a movie. It's amazing.
I started writing down. One of my god sisters been, keeps encouraging me to write down my experiences. I started writing it down. There's a lot more. I learned so much in those days. My Guru Maharaj told me that I saw the end of the wave of enthusiasm that was created by Srila Prabhupada's personal association,
I see.
which was amazing.
Wow. That is amazing.
But anyway, so now our topic. I already talked enough about myself.
That's actually a really great segue into our next question. A lot of people have difficulties balancing and negotiating spirituality and demands of the workplace. I mean, being asked to cut a side of beef, knowing what you knew at the time, and what you were learning, with the devotees. And even in the Gita, Arjuna, whose occupation was a soldier, was confused due to a conflict of duties and dharmas. So how can we fulfill our material duties and at the same time make spiritual advancement today?
Well, a simple example that I want to start out with is the example of a scale, a balancing scale. So on a scale, if you put something on one side and then you put an equally heavy item on the other side, the scale will balance, right? But if you put something much heavier on one side and lighter on the other side, the scale automatically tilts. So the first point is that let's say you put 45 minutes of Krishna consciousness on one side of the scale, and you put 16 hours of material life on the other side of the scale, it's not going to balance. So that's the first point. The first point is that spiritual life is a series of progressive adjustments to balance your material life and your spiritual life in a way that you can continue to advance spiritually. So now the next point I want to make is that, do you know about this term? It's called a hyperbolic curve.
Mm-hmm.
So a hyperbolic curve, let's just say, for example, where we are right now is point A. And being back with Radha and Krishna is point B. Right? And there's a straight line between point A and point B. Now, if at point A, we just make a slight deviation from the teachings of our spiritual master and the previous acharyas, at first, it doesn't seem to be, there doesn't seem to be anything wrong. But if you begin to follow that deviation, in the course of time, you're far, far away from point B. You see? So my Guru Maharaj used to say it's not a hyperbolic curve, it's a diabolic curve. So, and what happens because of that is that we become exhausted. We become exhausted spiritually, because just like, say, you make some advancement, but at the same time we're cultivating material desire, or we're not balancing our material and spiritual life enough, then we're off the track. So now where we are is the same distance from where we were when we were at point A. And if we keep repeating that, we start to become illusioned into believing that our spiritual practices are not working, because we're going over and over again the same fatiguing distances to get back to that straight line between point A and point B. So that's another point in, in the workplace, you know. So the question is how to stay, on that straight progressive path, and how to make progressive adjustments so that we can, be enthusiastic through spiritual realization. Okay, so the first point is that association, our association, we become just like the people that we associate with. Prahlad Maharaj in the Bhagavatam, he talks about looking in a mirror, that our association is just like looking in a mirror. It reflects. it's a reflection. We become a reflection of our association. So Srila Rupa Goswami, he recommends that we search out like-minded association within the devotees. Of course, we want to associate and respect and appreciate all the devotees, but also we're going to find that there are certain devotees that we're very like-minded with. And the beauty of that is that we begin to have, it offers the opportunity of loving exchanges. Right? There's a famous verse, Dadati Pratigrinati Guyamakati Prichati Bhunkte Bhujayate Chaiva. What is it? Something Priti Lakshana. Sarva Priti Lakshana. Anyway, there's Rupa Goswami explains there are 6 symptoms of loving exchanges between devotees. Revealing one's mind in confidence, inquiring confidentially, giving gifts and receiving gifts, and offering prasadam and accepting prasad are the 6 symptoms of love shared by one devotee and another. And really that's true in all relationships, but it becomes spiritualized in the devotional relationships because it's centering around Krishna and service to Krishna and loving Krishna. All the things in spiritual life are there with the material life. The difference is that Krishna is present in the spiritual life. We're going out for lunch or dinner with our friends. We're talking to our friends, about things that we're interested in or that, that involve us. We're giving gifts. We're receiving gifts. These things are all, and people love one another for that. Yeah. So the point I want to make is that you see in spiritual life, it's not that we can just go on doing some service and not cultivate loving relationships amongst one another, and then suddenly at the end of our life, pop our heads up in the spiritual world and then get into it. It's not going to work. So, like Srila Prabhupada, he said that the Nectar of Devotion is the law book of ISKCON. Now, if you read Nectar of Devotion, the whole book is just about relationships. So, how to cultivate those loving relationships, we have to find like-minded devotees that we feel, sheltered by and comfortable with and affection for and intimacy with, so that we can reveal our hearts and in confidence and inquire confidentially and give gifts and receive gifts. Mm-hmm. You see, devotees we can invite over for prasadam. Of course, we could invite like anybody over for prasadam. In fact, that's a really nice thing. I remember when in the Mahabharata, when the Pandavas were sent away, they were seemingly given part of the kingdom by Duryodhana. They were given this city called Varnavata. So in the city of Varnavata, Duryodhana had sent this evil henchman, one of his ministers. His name was what? Prayochana? No, something like that. Prayochana, something like that. Anyway, Prayochana, this man, he was a minister of Narottana. He'd do anything for money. He'd kill his own mother for money. So Narottana had paid him off to go and build a palace and fill the walls with every type of flammable material they possibly could, and then wine and take care of the Pandavas in such a nice way that in the course of time, which took a year, were comfortable living there, and burn them alive in the sleep.
Mm.
That was the plan. So what happened at this time was so there were three brothers. Dhritarashtra, who was a king. He was very powerful, had the strength of 10,000 elephants, but he was born blind. His next younger brother's name was Pandu Maharaj. He became emperor because his older brother was blind, and he's the father of the Pandavas. And then the third brother, his name's Vidura, and he was disqualified to be part of the royal, the aristocracy because his mother was a servant. Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Mahadev just came on. Mahadev, Prabhu.
Mm.
I'm seeing his picture on the screen, not you anymore, Bhakta Winston.
Oh.
There. So what happened was Vidura knew what was going on. So because he had these men had spies and different intrigues and different people that were helping them or being paid to disclose information. So Vidura spoke a riddle to Maharaj Yudhishthira, telling him that you're going to be killed by a weapon, that has no blade, but that's sharp. Anyway, so the Queen Kunti and the other Pandavas, they asked Maharaj Yudhishthira, what did he say? And he said that when we get to this place, they're going to try to burn us alive. Mm. No one could understand this riddle except for Maharaj Yudhishthira, told by Vidura. So Vidura, he sent an engineer there, and who disclosed himself as a well-wisher with all this intimate information from Vidura, and he dug this tunnel out of the palace that no one knew of. Hmm. So what ended up happening was at the end of the year, when this Prayochana was going to burn them alive, the Pandavas held a huge party in the palace, and they said everybody in the city was invited. Everybody in the city of Varnavata was invited. So they all came there, and they had a huge party. And there was one Sudra woman with her 5 sons. And, at a party, they serve wine and liquor and things like that. So they had become so drunk that they fell unconscious in one of the rooms. Nobody knew about it. Anyway, so everybody went home after the party, and Prayochana was planning to light this palace on fire and burn them that night. But what happened was Bhima, he knew about it. The Pandavas knew about it from this message from Vidura. So Bhima went into Prayochana's room. So the way this palace was built was, one side of it was a gorgeous palace, and the other side of it was the ramparts and a warehouse for weapons. So the plan was that when he lit the palace on fire, if the fire didn't kill him, the explosion from all the weapons would kill them. Hmm. So anyway, so what happened was Bhima went in there and he killed Prayochana in his own room. He beat him to death. Bhima did that to this evil minister. And then Bhima lit the palace on fire. And then the Pandavas escaped through that secret tunnel, right? And the fire was so great that it lit up the entire city of Varnavata, and everyone in the city came out. They said the fire was so strong it was as if it was daytime out. Mm. So no one could go in to see if the Pandavas, what was happening, and they couldn't put the fire out. And then in the next day, when they finally got it all out, the engineer showed up, and he, acting like one of the citizens, looking for the Pandavas' remains in the ashes, he went and carefully covered up the entrance to the tunnels. And then they found the burnt bodies of that Sudra woman and the 5 brothers, her 5 children. And so they announced that the Pandavas were killed. And then Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra, they made this big a funeral, and all their ashes that were brought there. And the Pandavas, they escaped out into the forest, way, way, way out into the forest, like in a place where only ferocious animals and other types of well, those days they were called rakshasas. But anyway, that's a whole nother topic. Only those, ferocious animals and these rakshasas dwelled in that place, and they lived out there. So the point that I'm making about is the intimacy that, when we develop these relations. So this point, it was brought up in the Varnavata pastime that when the Pandavas first went there and started to rule Varnavata, it was recommended by Srila Vyasadeva that you invite everybody, according to their social position, to the palace, and share prasadam with them. And because by doing that, by having that loving exchange with them, they'll become inclined to let you rule, for you to be their ruler.
Okay.
So I mean, it's a practical social thing, but it also has to do with deepening our relationships and developing affection for one another.
Sure.
So sharing prasadam is one of the best ways to do that. But even more than that is developing an understanding of relationships based on like-mindedness. So when we do that, and then we cultivate that relationship, when we share prasadam with one another, when we reveal our hearts in confidence, inquire confidentially, when we share gifts and receive gifts, then we actually begin to experience and are able to actually practice devotional service. Because see, on our own, we're just left with our faith and our discipline.
Yeah.
And our faith and our discipline, can change. I mean, hopefully it just keeps getting stronger, but it may not. So when we're in the association of devotees, we get a taste like, in English, we have the word love, Prabhupada explains. But, the English language is very, now it's post-industrial.
Yeah.
But the word love, we use it in a very loose way. Like you could say, well, I love my wife. I love God. I love curry puffs and cranberry some chutney. I love my dog. I love soccer. So I'm using the same term to define the feelings and the relationship that I have for my dog with my wife.
Yeah. That's really interesting. The idea of, the importance of relationships in spiritual advancement. What about in the workplace? Because it seems like it's a lot easier if you can find like-minded devotees, in the temple, in service, on book distribution. But what about if you're in a work environment? Does like your Krishna consciousness and your bhakti practice kind of have to be flicked off like a light, or is there a way to kind of transfer that same mindset and consciousness into all the different jobs?
Yes. So that's the next point. So the next point is that now, like if you study, let's use, for example, a typical Hindu guy who comes to the temple. All right. Now, if you talk to him, he might be, say, a neuroscientist, right? So what I found that the Hindu guys do is they compartmentalize their identities. They compartmentalize their knowledge. Like when this guy's a Hindu, he's in the temple and he's a Hindu. He's bowing down. He's standing in the Arctic. He's coming for Janmashtami. But when he's a neuroscientist, then he turns off his he leaves the Hindu compartment of his brain and goes into the neuroscientist part of his brain.
Mm.
But the problem that they have is they can't, they might be into, say, hearing the story of Lord Nrsingadev and think that's really far out, or they might think, oh, the deities are very beautiful, like that. But when it comes to, what is reality, you find that they generally go towards the Western worldview.
Mm.
That things have come about from a sudden chance explosion and everything's based on quantum mechanics and just like in India today. So, the Prime Minister of India, Prime Minister Modi, right? He's like totally Hindu, right? Like everything should be Hindu. But when they're faced with like these huge droughts that they're having in India right now, you don't see them going to Bhagavad Gita for a solution.
Mm.
That rain is based on sacrifice, and for this age, sacrifice is the chanting of the holy name. They never do that. They go to Western science. So what I'm saying is deep down, when you go deep down into their hearts, they're actually very much affected by their materialistic association.
Mm.
They don't have faith, or the point I want to make is they are not intellectually satisfied enough by what they know spiritually to accept it over the intellectual information that they have received from a Western, what is it called? Reductionistic, a worldview.
Mm-hmm.
Right? What's it called? Materialistic reductionism.
Yeah.
You know how it goes, right? That there's the cells break down to molecules, the molecules break down to subatomic, to atoms. Atoms break down to subatomic particles, and the ultimate, building block, our ultimate identity is a subatomic particle,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which are called quarks.
Yeah.
Do you ever wake up in the morning and think that you're a quark?
All the time.
But anyway, the point I'm trying to make about the association. Okay, so deep down, that's the thing we have to look at, that people are rejecting Krishna consciousness deep within their hearts, almost unknowingly, because they have not yet undergone the spiritual training that's necessary to understand spirituality. Like, in other words, the point I want to make, Mahadev, for who's back up.
Yeah.
If the point I want to make is that, if somebody is a spiritual ignoramus, why should that person be an authority as to whether, what the origin of life is? So, that's something we have to look at. Just like for example, I'm going deeply into the philosophy, and I'll get into some practical things for you in the workplace. The point that I want to make is, first of all, just like, say, for example, we make a new medication. And this medication, you and I created it, and it can cure the common cold. Now, who has the authority to evaluate whether that medication can actually be sold in CVS pharmacies? Can for lack of a better example, can you just stop a truck driver out here on what highway am I on? Highway 80? Can you just stop a truck driver out on Highway 80 and ask him to verify, whether the medication actually can do what you say it does? Of course not, because he doesn't have the qualifications to, certify it or to evaluate it. So in the same way, we have to be very careful who we are, accepting as authorities when it comes to evaluating our spiritual lives and the spiritual information that we're being given. There's thousands and thousands of spiritual proofs that support Krishna consciousness, but we have to be qualified to evaluate those proofs. So the first point, is that we have to take a very serious approach to becoming qualified spiritually. So to the point where we can openly discuss our own questions and doubts with anybody. And, so that's what gives you the strength to develop spiritual relationships with materialistic people or with atheists or with anybody. It starts with us. So first of all, we have to look at our own daily program. Like I was talking about the scale. Just like for me, so I require some extra sleep most of the time because I'm driving during the day now. So what I'll do is I wake up, I'll have my Mangal Artik, I do my Shinger Dev prayers, my Tulsi prayers. If I have to, I'll go back to sleep. I'll wake up, but every day I'm doing my morning program. I'm listening to lectures. I'm chanting all my rounds, even extra rounds. I'm doing kirtan. I'm talking with devotee friends like that. And so when I go into my workplace, what I do is I buy different books. Like I usually start off with Higher Tastes. I tell them about Kalachandji's Restaurant and Palace in Dallas, which I'm from, and our restaurant's award winning. And my wife and we cook for festivals, and I introduce them to the idea of vegetarianism, to talk to them a little bit about spiritualizing their food, that there's a yoga of eating, give them some great recipes, and we start to make a friendship based on just eating. And sometimes I might cook something and bring it to work, or just just the fact that we have we're kind of like uniting on food. And because everybody's going to eat, and if you cook something really good, or if you show them something, say in the Higher Taste, like one of the famous Singapore recipes, this curry puff that I was telling you about that I like so much. It's like a light samosa, and then we take a tamarind chutney and we blend dry cranberries into it and make like a too hot to handle, too sweet to resist cranberry sauce for it. And it's like, to me, it's like one of the ultimate foods on the planet. And yeah, and so when people, when we talk as friends in the workplace, and I mention that to them, everybody's like, wow. And then if you bring some, or you cook something, you bring it to work and share it with them, first of all, people, wow, man, they think like, this guy's really generous, he's really nice, or everybody can warm up to that. But if they taste it and they really like it, they suddenly and I did this catering of rock concerts and things with my wife called Krishna's Cuisine, Experience the Yoga of Eating. And we went to sometimes these huge rock concerts. I remember we did one in Denver called the Riot Fest. 280,000 kids were there.
Wow.
And without getting into it too deeply, like the best thing my wife said she really enjoyed about coming home from that festival is that she didn't have to hear the F word. And anyway, I have a little, I want to spiritualize that a little bit, because I know that can be kind of harsh for people to hear, but the new F word is forgive. So every time, somebody does something that really annoys you, you can just say F you. Anyway, so yeah, and then what I saw was the event, you got people on stage, just swearing and so vulgar and everything. And then the kids, they're getting literally robbed by the event coordinators. You know, $250 to come in for the weekend, $35 for a t-shirt. You know, if they're hungry, they got to pay $8, you know, for like a 10-ounce cup of frozen French fries, $4 for a 16-ounce bottle of water. You know, they literally turn these kids upside down and just shake the money out of their pockets, and then they just throw them away. Nobody really cares about them, and they have a hard time identifying with their parents at home, because their parents are saying to them, the best thing you can do with your life is go to school, study a bunch of stuff you're never going to use, and be $100,000 in debt before you even start your career. So they have a hard time swallowing that. And they don't feel like anybody really loves them or cares about them, because there's nobody really having these kind of loving exchanges with them. And so really what you're left with is groups of kids, 2, 3 kids, 4 kids that are close to one another, sitting on the curb inside the festival and literally sedating themselves with different types of intoxication so that they can, you know, tolerate and literally, you know, forget how much they're being exploited, and how little, you know, what little interest they have, or that people have within them. They're literally, you know, dealing with like a type of like deep depression. So if a devotee shows up there, you know, and shows even a little bit of love to them and gives them a book or some prasadam, like I would get these messages back from kids. I did a tour on a rock concert tour of like 30 shows, and we set up a booth called the mantra meditation booth. So I would tell the kids, look, anybody who leaves me their phone number and their email, who's really interested, I had like 4 questions. I said, I'll personally call you. So like the next day or 2 later, I would call them on the phone. You know, like I would get about 300 to 500 kids to give me their name, their phone number every day.
Wow.
And out of them, about half of them would actually be real. But when I would call them, this would be like, this is the response that most of the kids would give me. I would, you know, they'd answer the phone. And like, hello? And I'd say, hey, Hare Krishna, this is Narottamananda from the Warp Tour, one of the monks from the Krishna monk booth. And then they would say, oh, wow, you called me? And I'd say, yeah. I'd say, you remember I told you guys, if you know, you left me a number, I'd call you. Oh, where are you? And, you know, we were at the next concert, you know, on the tour. Oh, man, I wish I was with you guys. You know, I said, well, hey, you know, I'm calling you if you've tried chanting anymore after, you know, after the festival. And like someone, I remember the difference, most kids had a really good response about the chanting, but I remember one guy was telling me, oh God, I went to the temple in Philadelphia, man, and the devotees are awesome. And I said, really? I said, you had a good time? Oh, yeah. I said, well, we're calling you to see if you're interested in us. Maybe we could come over and make pizza for you guys, do some more music and discuss more. Oh, yeah, I got like about 10 friends, man. I could invite them over. And if you guys want to come over, sure. You know, that would be the response for most of the kids.
Wow, that's amazing.
But if you see them, but if you just see them at the festival, they're like totally depressed. And you know, or they're just so intoxicated, you know, like very intoxicated. But you can see a film. We did a film of some of the kids and talking about their experience when they came to our mantra booth. Some of these kids, I mean, when I'm saying kids, I'm talking about college students and maybe older than that. But they would come to our booth. Some of them would come back 4 or 5, 6 times in one event and sit down and chant with us.
Wow.
And talk to us. Most of the bands would come over and talk to us. Famous musicians, like you know, this one, his name's Matsya Yahoo.
Okay.
He's like a hip hop rap. He's a Jewish rabbi.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Madhya.
he's become a devotee.
Oh, wow.
He came to our trailer. We were serving. The first time he came walking up, he came up to the trailer. He folded his hands. He said, "Hare Krishna." And I asked my friend, he's a music producer. He was with me at the festival helping me. And I said, "Hey, who's this?" And he said, "Oh my God, this is Matsuyahu. This guy is like really famous." And then he brought his whole band back, and then we were catering the band on the back of the stage.
Wow.
And then the next thing I know, my friend was telling me, "Wow, he's actually practicing devotional service. He's chanting now. He shaved his head."
Wow.
But so first of all, so in the workplace, okay, first of all, you need a balance. So what I'm saying is, whatever you learn in the temple, like there's a morning and evening program, try to just keep that going every day. I mean, I realize some days it's not going to be practical or possible, but to the best of your ability, do a morning program. Maybe even keep your cellular device off until you finish your program. you know chant, read a little bit. If you can, go to the temple with the other devotees. That's going to strengthen you. That's another thing, living in a devotional community. Like me, I live right across the street from the temple. It's literally like the deities are like in the next room of my house.
Mm.
When I'm at home, I go to almost every artique every day. It's just because it's just 2 minutes walk from me, from my front door. I just walk in, see the deities, bow down, say my Gayatri, chant my extra rounds, whatever I need to do, talk to somebody in the temple, meet somebody at our restaurant, and go back home. So the thing I was saying about the workplace, so if you have this, Prabhupada called it a transcendental sandwich. If you have the morning program and you do an evening program for yourself, and then during the day you do your work, right? Okay, so how to spiritualize that? Well, it comes down to how you use the money. If you use the money that you make, say for distributing books, like me, every week I buy books and I keep the books with me, and everybody I meet, I talk to them and I give them a book.
Mm.
Everybody. It's a very natural, organic way to do book distribution and to preach without having to have a big festival, without having to do any extra endeavor. And like now, the guys that where I work, there's like 40 women in our office, and there's like 30 guys in the shop and the rest of in our second office. And like I'm on the second book. I've given them prasadam like half a dozen times. I'm on my second book with them. I'm giving them all signs of self-realization. And people are, they're like telling me, "Man, my wife loves the cookbook. She already tried this or that." I talked to them a little bit about the science of self-realization. They telling me, "Man, this is so interesting."
Mm.
You know, and it's like I'm telling them, "Look, I'm not trying to convert you guys. I'm not trying to do anything, but this knowledge, it really picks you up." And I give them a lot of information, like Prabhupada has amazing axioms. Like one of the things I tell them when I give the science of self-realization, I talk a little bit about Prabhupada. I tell them that, first Prabhupada, you may have never seen him before, but he was the guru for the Beatles.
Mm.
He even helped them write their music.
Mm.
And in Chant and Be Happy, if you read that, Prabhupada's discussing the lyrics for some of the songs that they're writing. And I said, but Prabhupada's also, he's recognized for having he wrote more books than even Shakespeare. Prabhupada wrote over 100 titles, like 500 pages each. He's responsible for over 600 million editions of his books in 82 languages. I mean, he translates word by word the original teachings. It's you got to be, at least a little interested in somebody like that. If you're questioning at all about your life or about, how to become more happy, more satisfied. So anyway, I give them a little bit of information about Prabhupada, and then I said one of his axioms was, Prabhupada would say, is that um, religion without a scientific basis, without a scientific process to realize the soul and God, is simply sentimentalism.
Mm.
And science without an absolute truth, without an ultimate reality, is simply mental speculation. Just like when they asked Prabhupada about Darwin's theory, Prabhupada said, your forefathers may have been monkeys, but mine were not.
Mm.
So I tell them that, you know, Prabhupada wanted to show that this literature gives a scientific basis to our spirituality. I put them on the website like tovp.org. You know, it's all young guys like you building that place with all the scientific information. A lot of those guys are featured like on history.com and other. There's some really good information, like on a high level, academic level. That's out there right now. Like our Guru Maharaj did a PhD showing that Prabhupada is a bona fide religious authority from an academic perspective. And Harvard printed that as a textbook for Vaishnavism. So, you know, I throw that kind of stuff on them. I give them a book, you know, whenever I can, we share prasadam. And like now when we see each other, you know, like at first, what I find is that, and I find this in my own life, at first, my chanting or my spirituality was getting in the way of my life. But now, my life is getting in the way of my spirituality.
Right.
So, what I find is that the same thing when I meet that now, they're like, you know, I mean, who wants to talk about trucking, you know? Like, when they see me, like, hey, you know, I want to talk on a. So one thing,
Sorry, Prabhu, you're
you
starting to
know,
break up a little bit.
then when you, yeah, and when you have really satisfying relationships with devotees, the kind that, you know, like there's different levels. Like I was talking about the word love in English, right? So here we are equating, you know, our feelings for our dog with the feelings that we have for God. I love God. I love my dog, right? I love my wife. I love my dog.
Mhm.
It's very muddled thinking.
Yeah.
You know, really, English is an industrial language. It's very mechanistic. It's not personal.
Mhm.
So in Sanskrit, you know, love is broken into many, many different levels. Like
Sorry, Prabhu,
sadhu sang,
you're breaking up a little.
ruchi. Oh, you have different levels. Can you hear me?
Yep, it was breaking up a little bit earlier.
Yeah, I'm kind of out in the country right now, or I might have gone between cell towers.
Okay.
But the point I want to make is that, see, in Sanskrit, in Krishna consciousness, we have different levels to our emotions and love. So you know, so there's 5 basic categories, right? There's Shraddha, which means faith. There's Sadhu Sangha, which means good association. Actually, it's Sadhu Sangha, then Shraddha. We associate with people that are spiritual, that are saintly. Then we develop Shraddha, which is faith in them. We trust what they're saying to us is good for us. It's true. Then there's Ruchi. We start to develop a taste like, wow, you know, I mean, why don't we go to visit the, you know, Keshavarti Maharaj, you know, instead of going and watching, you know, a movie or whatever. You know, you start to get a taste for that. Then there's Bhava. Bhava means when we develop emotions, like that person, we start to consider the devotees' feelings and needs more than our own self. And then there's prema. Prema means when we develop spontaneous feelings of love. When when a devotee and when Krishna and the devotees become more important to us than our own life and soul.
Mhm.
So you know, love, you know, when you talk about love from a Krishna conscious perspective, you know, what are you talking about? Are you talking about ruchi? Are you talking about shraddha, faith? Are you talking about prema? You see, it's not muddled. And also, Krishna consciousness divides material nature and spiritual nature. You know, like, I mean, we always hear this, right? Somebody will say, oh, something is natural, right? Sex is natural. You know, so many things are natural, right? So the Bhagavad Gita, it asks, which nature are you talking about? Something, is it natural materially, or is it natural spiritually? You see, it divides it.
Yeah.
Can you hear? So, you know, that's the thing. English just muddles all of that together. Sanskrit is very specific.
Mm.
So we develop, you know, a much clearer understanding of ourselves.
Yeah.
Where, and also Krishna consciousness, it divides the body from the self.
Mm.
So much so, you know, that we're able to withdraw our consciousness from, you know, our senses, the dictations of our material senses and our minds, and we can just be ourselves for a change.
Mm.
Right? Like there's no reason to become somebody else. All those positions are already taken.
Yeah.
Right? But the problem we're having is we are just so distracted by our senses and our mind, right? Have you ever been distracted before?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Right? I mean, that's life, right? We're going from one distraction to the next.
Mm.
So, you know, like I talk to people about the difference between their faith and their intrinsic qualities. Like that's the difference between Krishna consciousness and what's being taught as religion. Religion deals with faith. Faith can change, right? We could be Christians, Buddhists, Hindus, basketball players, right? Or we could, that all can change. But our intrinsic quality, like the intrinsic quality of sugar is sweetness, intrinsic quality of fire is heat and light. And the intrinsic quality of all of us, it doesn't matter who we are, it's the quality of service. Just like when you help somebody else, Bhakta Winston, how do you feel?
Feel great.
You feel great, right? Because that's our intrinsic quality. That never changes like our faith.
Yeah.
Now, when we purify that and when we bring it up to purify means when we free our service attitude from expectations, when we free our service attitude from, you know, trying to get something from someone else,
Mm-hmm.
then, and when we elevate it to the transcendental platform, transcendental, if you look in the dictionary, it means something that is beyond the influence of time, something that is not under the confines of past, present, and future.
Mm.
So when you elevate your consciousness to the platform of pure service attitude on a transcendental platform, then you're happy all the time.
Mm.
And you're no longer controlled by material things. Rather, you can control material things and utilize them in a way that helps you and others around you spiritually.
Mm.
And when you do that, when you have friendships like that in the workplace, man, your friendships become ecstatic. You become excited to make friends. You want to associate with other people. You're looking forward to going to work.
Mm. I see.
And then if you take your money and use it in a spiritual way, you know, to whatever degree you can, Rupa Goswami is talking about using 50% of your income in a spiritual way, putting 25% of it in the bank and using 25% of it to maintain your family. Not everybody can do that, but, you know, to whatever degree you can do it, and use the money in a spiritual way that enlivens you. You know, support like devotees that are really, you know, that really inspire you. Support projects that inspire you. You know, buy books, give the books out to your friends, or you know, like do things with your money that are directly in Krishna consciousness. Invite people to your home. Spend your money to have nice prasadam. Do some kirtan. All of these things. Then, when you go to work, you'll feel like I shouldn't say you will feel, you will experience that your work is becoming transformed. It's becoming spiritualized.
Mm.
That you're actually working for Krishna and Guru.
Mm.
And if you're balanced spiritually, then you will get enough, you will get such a good experience in your heart and in your life that it will automatically take you away from your material desires. It's not that we become materially dead, but the difference is we start to use material things in a spiritual way.
Yes. Mm.
You see? It's not a matter of giving up material things. That's the point about Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, right? Krishna told him, even if you go to the forest, you're still going to be a warrior.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So, but what you need to understand is how to spiritualize your life as a warrior.
Yeah.
Just like a knife. Prabhupada gives the example of a knife. A knife in the hands of a criminal can kill us. The same knife in the hands of a surgeon can save our life. So the knife is not intrinsically good nor bad, but depending on how we utilize it, it becomes good or bad. So the same way, material energy, it is Krishna's energy.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't just come from nothing.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't. All right. So this energy is Krishna's property, but it's temporary. But even though it's temporary, it has an intrinsic value that it's the property of God.
Yeah.
You see, just like $1 million, or let's talk about $1 trillion. $1 trillion, it's just basically worthless paper. For what it actually is, it's just paper. Like if it was in your front yard, if a bunch of paper, just blank paper, blew into your front yard, you just rake it up and throw it in the trash. But currency notes, because they have an invested value, they have an intrinsic value given by the government, you can take that worthless paper and you can invest it and do amazing things.
Yeah.
So the same way, even though this material energy is basically temporary manifestation, but because it's the property of God, we can take it. It has an intrinsic value of God. We can take it and use it in God's service, in Krishna's service, and it gives us a tremendous benefit, spiritual benefit. So it's not that we have to give up anything material. In fact, we need to utilize everything we possibly can. Like Prabhupada said, if you're going to go out and work, you should make as much money as possible. Right? It's not like, Krishna consciousness is not telling, hey, Bhakta Wisdom, get rid of your new Lexus and I want you to start driving around in a motor rickshaw from India.
Right. No, Prabhu, I think we're sorry to cut us a little bit short, but we're running close on time, and I wanted to make sure that our audience had some time for Q&A.
Okay, sure, please.
Can we ask you a few questions?
Please do.
Okay, awesome. If anyone would like to ask Narottam Prabhu some questions, please feel free to unmute yourself or type in the chat.
Just one comment.
All I see is this bald head at the on the screen. Who is that?
Oh, I can't see myself right now, but
there he is. Jai Prabhu, my obeisances to you.
just my wife, Guru Bhakti, she has what's called a smart table. At her doctor's office, she has books, Prabhupada's books, and books on Bhakti Yoga. And over the years, several nice people have gotten the books. Some of them have even watched this Zoom program, and some of them are chanting Hare Krishna. So it's a very unintrusive way to share Krishna consciousness with someone. And there's so many ways. I really appreciate Narottam's sharing, how he gives higher taste books and prasadam, and I think it's great. Just a comment.
Oh, that's a wonderful thing. I remember Vishvambara Prabhu. He's a Prabhupada disciple. He's taken Vanaprastha now. He was an orthodontist, and he told me that he kept a library of all of Prabhupada's books in his dentist's office, and they would give out, they had a stack of magazines for people to take home. So people would come in and sit in the office while they were waiting to see him. And sometimes they would open the books and take a look, or, they would take magazines home like that. And then from the money that he was making, just like I know your good wife, Mother Guru Bhakti, he invested, he told me he gave $100,000 to $150,000 donations to, not just once, repeatedly over a number of years, to both Mayapur and Vrindavan. And also at that point also he became the temple president for the Detroit temple. So he was operating his dentist office and then being the president for the temple as devotional service, without taking a salary. So yeah, that's wonderful. Sometimes, I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but sometimes, unfortunately, devotees will become discouraged, and they'll say things like, oh, we've distributed so many books, nothing's happening, people are not joining, and so forth. But that's not true, you guys. If you look at this movement, it's expanded like all over the world. 650 centers, restaurants, farms, schools, food relief, so many different, festivals, Rath Yatras, all this stuff. This is all based on book distribution. These temples were pretty much all built by devotion, by money that was raised through book distribution. And, so many of us receive books. Yeah, not everybody joins the temple, but I mean, I don't think that's realistic to even think like that. Like, let's just say, for example, if everybody in the city of Houston wanted to become a devotee today, would you expect them all to move into the temple? Obviously not. Obviously not. So, but if you look in the city of Houston, where, over many years, books have been distributed, not only are there well-wishers, I mean, I was there after the grand opening, and one of the city representatives came, and I went on this tour with Shyam Sundar Prabhu, and the city representative, I'm sorry, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, American man, and he was so impressed by the temple and by Prabhupada's books and by the devotees and by the magnitude of the grand opening. And also just like all of those Namhata adult education programs that you guys do, in people's homes where they're studying books, they're buying sets of books for their homes. These books are powerful. And the chanting of the holy name is non-different than Krishna himself. I mean, the more we spread this, even if somebody takes it up even just to a small degree, like if somebody, let's say, for example, a college professor, my Guru Maharaj, he met so many college professors. So after he passed away, after Tamal Krishna Maharaj passed away, a group of these professors that were helping him, cooperating with him on different projects that he was working on, they finished those particular projects, and Satyaraj Prabhu printed this Vaishnava journal. And I mean, I read what these professors wrote. It's just amazing. The amount of the depth of Krishna consciousness that they imbibed just in the course of an academic relationship, that was probably, very sparse. So, if even one person embraces even one small part of Prabhupada's worldview, it has a powerful effect. It has a huge effect, just like vegetarianism. I remember when I, not too long after I joined, I went to Guru Prasad Swami's parents' home because Maharaj asked me to help him in Mexico. And we would stop at his parents' home, which is in Harlingen. It's like right on the border of Texas between America and Mexico. So they had a guest room, so we would stay there. And his dad started talking to me. And his father was very rich. Like his father, he was the kind of guy who was like a paper boy when he was 14. And by the time he was married, he owned 3 major newspapers. He owned the newspaper that he was a paper boy for, and he was like the major investor of 28 newspapers across America. He told me that he had $50 million in savings, not including his investments and his properties. When I was talking to him, it was funny because I had come back from Hong Kong, and we became friends. Guru Prasad Maharaj's father and I became friends because we were both acquainted with the Hari Leelas. The Hari Leelas are an Indian family in Hong Kong who became very rich. They came from India almost penniless, but they later became very rich. And the Hari Leelas helped us open the temple in Hong Kong with a major donation. And so the Hari Leelas had gone on a cruise with Guru Prasad Maharaj's parents, and I was asking his father, how much does something like that cost? So when the time I was talking to him, he was organizing the 10th world cruise on the Queen Elizabeth. So if you guys aren't familiar, the Queen Elizabeth is like the ultimate cruise ship in the world. So he told me that just the tickets for the cabin for 3 weeks cost $64,000. 32,000 per person for the cabin, and then he told me he spends another $150,000 to $250,000 on the ship, just eating, buying drinks, jewelry, and gambling. Guru Prasad Maharaj's father told me that. So we became friends. So this is years and years ago, right? So Maharaj, his father, he leaned over to me and he said, "You're not one of those Hare Krishnas, are you?" So anyway, what happened was, just so you know, I was sitting there. They had like a breakfast bar. I was eating some breakfast, and Guru Prasad Maharaj's father was sitting in this like rec room watching television, and his wife came in, and he started to argue with his wife, and I was there watching it, and finally, Guru Prasad Maharaj's father turns to his wife and says, "What the hell do you want from me anyway?" And I was thinking, wow, that's a really interesting question because, here he is arranging the 10th world cruise on the Queen Elizabeth for her. She had a beautiful home, beautiful car. She had a summer house whatever it is up in Colorado in the mountains, right? All this money, $50 million in the bank. And I was thinking, man, why don't you tell him that, why don't you give me Krishna? Because none of this material things are making me happy. I'm sitting there just meditating like that and waiting for her to see what she says. So she sees me and she's embarrassed. So she just storms out of the room. And then about 5 minutes later, she comes back in and she tells him, "I'm going to leave for 2 weeks with my daughter to our summer house in Colorado." And I said, and I'm still sitting there eating, like I'm kind of ashamed to be there in the middle of their fight, but it just all unfolded so quick. And so then the father, he asks his wife, "Who's going to take care of me?" And then right at that time, while you're gone, and then right at that time, Guru Prasad Maharaj came into the room, and then his mother turned to us and she said, "They're going to take care of you while I'm gone." So she just volunteered us right on the spot, man. It was really on the spot. And I knew Guru Maharaj was obliged to her because she would like sneak, give him like 10 grand at a time when he would go to Mexico and stuff, to help support him and everything secretly, because the father never wanted to support him. And as a devotee preaching, like his dad told him, he said, "If you give up this sannyas and come home and start working in the newspaper, I guarantee you $250,000 a year every year for the rest of your life. What do you think of that?" I was there once when his father said to him, "I'm prepared to give you $10,000 right now in your hand if you sit down here and drink a bottle of booze and eat a steak like a man." So wait a minute. So anyway, the point I'm trying to make here is that once his mother volunteered us, and I knew Maharaj was so obligated to her, and the father, then he turns to us and he says, all right, I don't care if they take care of me. And then he turns to Maharaj and he says to us, but I'm not going to eat any of that faggot vegetarian food.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
This is like, 40 years ago in America, right?
Oh my goodness, yeah.
So, then what Maharaj and I did was we went out. That time there was this group, the Seventh-day Adventist group. They're still around, and they were vegetarians, and they had this product called Loma Linda. I don't know if it's still available. I haven't looked for it, but they made all this mock meat. Like they have like cans of like whatever it is, tofu, chicken, and all that mock meat stuff that the Buddhists use now. So Maharaj and Maharaj actually called up Bhakti Sundar Maharaj. He was living in that area and asked him to buy some of it. And then we were cooking for Guru Prasad Maharaj's father with this mock meat. And he thought he was eating meat, you guys.
Oh my gosh.
Now, if you look at that to what vegetarianism is like today in America, you could see the huge transformation. I mean, they're like major scholars in the world today, like Ale Basham. He's considered like the top, university research, professor on Southeast Asian religions and philosophy. And he says that no one, since the day of Jesus Christ, has done more to spread a religion and to spiritualize society throughout the world than Srila Prabhupada. Like there was one, I was in Vrindavan, and there was one famous sannyasi. He came from South India. He's from the Madhavacharya sect. We come in this line. It's called the Gaudiya Madhava, the Brahma Gaudiya Madhava Sampradaya. So we're in the line of Madhavacharya. So one of their famous sannyasis who's living today, he came to Vrindavan. It was Srila Prabhupada's appearance day. And he spoke about Prabhupada, and he said that he considered Prabhupada to be greater than Lord Shiva. Now, this is in India. Now, that's a very heavy statement. It's like somebody getting on, in front of the public and saying that they consider Prabhupada greater than Jesus Christ, right? In front of a group of Christians. So anyway, in front of a group of Hindus and all these American devotees, there's probably 2,000 of us there. He said he considered Prabhupada greater than Lord Shiva. And so I was wondering, how can he say that? And then he went on and explained. He said that Lord Shiva was able, with his spiritual power, he was able to control the flow of the Ganges falling from the heavens. And he was able to let the Ganges flow out across India, which removes the sinful reactions of all those who bathe in the water, in her waters. He said, but Prabhupada was so powerful that he was able to bring down the ocean of love of God from Goloka Vrindavan and inundate the entire world.
Yeah, for sure.
So, we have to look, we have to see, things with spiritual vision. And we also have to look like, there was one professor, he wrote a book about our movement. And he was saying that in the first 50 years of Christianity, or in the first 50 years of Mohammedanism, it didn't spread like Krishna consciousness has spread all over the world.
Yeah.
And these teachings that Prabhupada have given us in this practice, I mean, it literally spiritualizes our lives. I mean, all of us experience this practically. Prabhupada has given us a system, a daily, that we can adopt into our daily life, a very simple system of meditation and spirituality that we can adopt into our daily lives that give us practical experience and freedom from the lower modes of nature, from ignorance and from passion. So the book distribution works, the chanting works. And again, it comes down to having the right association and like-minded association, and then also applying these teachings. The philosophy is the highest. you know, but even higher than that is practicing the philosophy.
Yeah.
So that's what we need to do, and the strength to do that comes by our association.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of practicing philosophy, I do need to sign off and finish chanting my rounds for the day.
Thank you. I have a few rounds myself, Dr. Winston. Anyway, I hope I covered. I mean, this topic is a big topic. I tried to cover as much of it as I can, you know. And I thank you guys so much for giving me the opportunity to discuss Krishna consciousness. I mean, I'm a very simple and, you know, mediocre person materially and spiritually, but, you know, having the opportunity to associate and to try to express my experience and my practice of Krishna consciousness, you know, it really makes me feel, what should I say, justified.
Yeah.
Oh, Narottam?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yeah, Narottam, this is Samadhi, Bhakti Sam from 35, 40 years ago. It's great to see you.
Nice to see you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yes, I'd love to reach out if and get in touch with you more. So just let me know. That'd be fantastic.
I remember you, Samadhi. So thank you for that. Thanks for
Great.
opening up. Yeah, anytime. You're welcome to. I mean, I'm here on Zoom. Otherwise, if you want to take my contact information, you're welcome to.
I can type your. May I type your number in the chat? Or
yeah, that'd be great. Put my cell phone number on the chat. That's the best way to reach me is by text, and then from text by talking, because I'm driving a lot and emails are just like a thing of the past with me. I mean, I might get
absolutely,
my emails
absolutely. I'll
once a
send you
week.
some text. Yes.
Okay, I just typed his number in the chat.
Thank you.
Okay,
So
got
much.
it. Thank you so much. Fantastic.
My pleasure. Thank you for joining.
Okay, on that note, Dr. Winston, please chant some great rounds.
Thank you, Jay. You too. Thank you so much for joining us.
And thank you, Sarvabhauma Prabhu and Mother Guru Bhakti for organizing this with Dr. Winston. It's just really a pleasure to be together like this.
Hare Krishna. Fantastic.
Hare Krishna, Samadhi Prabhu, you also. Thank you for joining. You too, Mahadev Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Dr. Jack, that's not Mahadev. Remember Dr. Jack from Dallas?
Yeah, I thought that's Mahadev. That's Bhakti Jack?
I was wondering who that was.
Oh, there you are. Now I know who it is when you talk.
Wow.
I still remember you used to deliver paintings to us in Midland and different places.
All over the country.
Yeah. Yeah. Hi, Jai Bhakti Jack. Really nice to see you. I thought you were Mahadev.
No, I kept wondering, trying to see who Mahadev, where he was. But yeah, I had a